again, drive it by risk, right? This supplier, what are the chances they're going to go wrong? And if it goes wrong, how bad is that going to be for me? And that will give you a nice risk score. And based on the risk score, you can decide whether or not you need to do further work to understand how scary they are.
Welcome to Survey Booker Sessions. Tune in to hear from people working in a range of industries and roles to provide you ideas that you can take away and use in your own business. I'm your host, Matt Nally, the founder and director of Survey Booker, which is the leading CRM and survey management system for surveyors. So on today's episode, we've got Andy Larkum from ADL Consulting. So thanks for coming on, Andy.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to start by giving us a bit of an overview as to what you do in terms of ADL Consulting?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, okay. So ADL Consulting, we are specialist ISO 27001 consultants. So essentially, we help companies to achieve all of the requirements for ISO 27001 so they can get that badge. So I guess we'll talk a bit more about what 27001 is later, so I won't bore you with that right now. But that's the mainstay. But because of that, there's a lot of information security and data protection stuff wrapped up in there. So we also get involved in GDPR, helping companies understand what that is and what they need to do about that too. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that's exactly actually very, very much why I wanted to get you on, is to look at how surveying businesses might be able to improve their information security perspective and things that people might not think about, and what are the realities around GDPR and all that kind of stuff. So it might be a good place to start actually then with what is ISO 27001, to get rid of the jargon side of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no. So 27001, it is, so ISO is the International Standards Organization. So essentially they are internationally recognized standards. That's quite key. And 27001 is their information security standard. And I think it's fairly safe to say that in the information security world, 27001 is kind of held up as the gold standard. It's a big old piece of work. It's a big standard, as you know, because you've been through it. A lot of work to do, but it's essentially it's a framework for helping companies to understand the risks that they're facing to their information security and to figure out what they should be doing to protect themselves from those risks. So done right, it's an awesome tool for helping businesses operate securely. Done badly, it's terrible. So don't do it badly.
I think it's surprising when you go through all the different sort of aspects of 27001 and realizing how much there is that can affect a business in terms of information security, whether it's how you're backing up data, or whether it's your people and how you're training them, or when they leave. There's so many aspects that we'll come on to. What are the core aspects of 27001? So I think there's three pillars on this: CIA. What's the I suppose those different parts?
Sure. Okay. So yeah, you're right. Foundational concepts in information security: the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Is what those three things stand for. And essentially, what we're trying to do is say, look, within your business, what are the things that are likely to affect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your information? So right at the heart of 27001 is this concept of risk, right? And we should do everything driven by an understanding of risk. So, if we said, for example, we are concerned that one of our employees might download our client database and take it to a competitor, right? That is a risk to the business. And so yes, what we should do is think about, well, firstly, if that happened, how bad would it be for us as a business? And we can think about that from a number of fronts, like, what might that cost us? What might that do for our reputation? What might that do in terms of legal ramifications, or potentially, technically it's a data breach, right? So it might we have to report that? Could we get fined for it? So there's all these things we can think about when we talk about consequence, right? So historically we used to talk about impact, and just lately there's a new version of the standard that's just come out. Came out in October last year, the 2022 version of 27001, and they've changed the wording there ever so slightly from impact to consequence. And I thought, well, it's the same thing, right? But then got thinking about it a little bit. I thought, well, actually, impact sounds very immediate, where consequence, wow, like be huge, right, and go on forever. So it's quite a good change, actually. So we think about, what are the consequences of that happening, and how likely is that to occur, right? And we bundle
Yeah.
those two things together. That gives us our risk score, and that drives everything we then do. So, if it's a really low risk score, it's probably not going to happen, or even if it did, it wouldn't matter that much. Why are we wasting time fixing that? Where in the
Yeah.
meantime, there's this other thing over here that's tremendously scary and extremely likely to happen and would ruin us as a business. We should probably get to fixing that first, right? So we understand what our risks are, then we do stuff about the risks, and the management system is driving all of that. So the ISO information security management system, that's kind of what it designs for you. And as I say, it's this framework, but the key bit, and this is really key, right? If I can drive this home as keenly as possible, it's all about understanding your risk for your business. So it should never be imposed on you. You can't. It's why template kits actually are a bit of a disaster, because you get this massive template kit of all these documents. Do we need all these documents? Probably not. No, I mean, actual prescribed documents in 27,001, there's only about like 12 or 13 documents you actually have to have. The rest of them are up to you, right? So framework, understand risk, do stuff about risk. That's how it works. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Yeah,
I
no,
just started chatting.
no, it's good. I think it's it's important not to look at it as a copy and paste from another business for the sake of doing something, because it's like taking T's and C's off someone's website. You can't be bothered to create your own or pay for your own, so you take another version, change the company names,
right.
And then does that actually achieve the benefit? Is ISO 27001, is it just for big businesses, or are the concepts still applicable to a sole trader and SME?
That's an awesome question. In fact, I did a lot of kind of soul searching actually around a little while back, and I think I wrote a blog article on this subject. When's the right time to do 27,000? Well, and I think the honest answer is there's never a good time. Like literally never. There might be better times, and I think in terms of sort of business size and scale, I've helped companies, one-man bands right up to multinationals and everything in between. So there's no, it's not ruled out for any type of company, but there are certain truths like the bigger you are, the harder it is to bring change. So, if we decide, well, we need to change the way we're doing this particular activity in a small company or in a one-man band, you go, all right then, and you change. In
Yeah.
a multinational, it might take you 12 months to roll that change out because there's a lot of people that have to listen. So, getting policies approved. If you're a one-man band, you go, well, you're the managing director, write a policy. You're happy with that? Yeah, all right, that's the policy. In a big company, it can take you months to get approval for that kind of stuff. So, I think probably sweet spot is somewhere between kind of 10 and 50 employees. If you're that kind of size, actually, you're in the perfect place because you've got generally speaking, you've got a bit more money than the very, the micro businesses. And, it does cost. There is an intrinsic cost in time, but then you've got also the cost of your audits because you have to pay an auditor to come and check that you're okay. And you've got cost of any help that you might need to get you over the line, right? So there is a cost associated, and if it is just you in the business, then time out of your business is expensive because you're just trying to make the business happen, right? And anytime you're not doing the work, you're not earning money, so that hurts.
Yeah.
But once you kind of hit the 10 to 50 stage, you might have some capacity across your 10 to 50 people to release some time to help with this process. And like I say, you've probably got a little bit more money to be able to spend on bringing help in. Once you go over that number, you start getting into the slightly larger companies. It takes longer to do stuff problem.
Yes.
But that's perfectly manageable. You've just got to set your expectations, right? So anyway, I'm giving you massive long answers. Sorry.
No, they get the details nice. I think from my understanding, my perspective is it's great to do at least the policy side. You don't have to necessarily do all the audits and get the certification, but if you're smaller, going through the policies and procedures around all the different aspects that it covers, whether it's gaining access to your property, which is probably more of a straightforward one for most people if you're smaller, but through to when someone leaves, as you say, can they take everything, or have you got processes in place to remove access from systems and protect them from things from being deleted because they've left on a bad note, whatever it might be. And I think if you're implementing that, you can be more confident in your general processes, and you've probably got a more fluid process for everything in your business then, in terms of how the customers are handled. So it ties in, I think, with not just it's a security necessity, but how you then operate generally more smoothly.
Totally. I mean, look, I would say 27001's got a bad rap, right? A lot of people, their impression, of their experience perhaps with 27001 is not healthy. It's not been positive, and usually that's because companies have implemented template kit systems. And they've gone, well, here's this thing that was built to work in any setting, everywhere in the world. So it's going to work in my business, right? Of course it isn't. And you're going to drown in paperwork and frustration. And it's not going to be helpful at all. But you're right. At the heart of it, the essence of it, of getting your policies right, your processes right, your systems in place, and making sure we're managing those to protect the thing that we've built, right? I mean, particularly if you're a business owner listening to this, this is your baby. You want to protect it, right? And put things in place to make sure that you're looking after it right. And 27001 gives you a framework to do that. Again, it's not prescriptive. It's a framework. We have to figure out how it applies to us. I'll stop it. Yeah. Sorry.
Not at all. And I think it's one of those ones as well. If you're a business owner that's wanting to scale up and build up the number of employees that you're working with, it's much easier to look at something like this generally now, in terms of you've then just got procedures in place for when you bring people on, in terms of how do you onboard them and give them the right knowledge and all that kind of stuff. So it's just useful, I think, as a general tool.
That's a good point, actually. So I think probably two words I've used with you in the past, formalize and standardize are kind of two keywords in 27001. They're not that much in the standard. They're just ones that work for me. Formalize, we're going to work out what it is we do and all agree that that's how we do it. If you've got 10 people in the business doing the same thing 10 different ways, that's tremendously inefficient and probably quite insecure, because there's gaps there. So if we can formalize that, agree how we do it, standardize that, agree how we do it, and we've got it. This is the standard. This is what we do, and then formalize that. Let's write that down so that we can all see that's how we've done it. And a lot of implementation work is around understanding how we do something, agreeing that that's how we do it, and then documenting that's how we do it, so that we can see if we ever deviate from that.
Yeah, and it gives you a very nice framework to work to. And I think because you meant to obviously, you will do, if you're actually certified, but obviously if you're not, then you don't have to do this part. But it's useful to build in those reviews so you can check, actually, are we doing what we said we're doing, and are there then issues because we're not? And it's something to refer back to if something goes wrong or not as well as you wanted it to. And I think one of the bits I was interested to talk to you about as well around this was, you obviously get to be the person that people like to work with in terms of setting policies and so on up, but you also get to be the person that everyone hates, which is the auditor. What are the things that you see firms do really well on the whole? And then we'll come on to the juicy bit potentially after.
Honestly, that's such a mixed bag. It's really difficult to answer that question as generally what do people do well. I think in my experience, what auditors do badly is they come in sort of a war footing, and I think equally what companies aren't very good at is recognizing that shouldn't be the approach, right? As an auditor, I should not be there to catch you out. It's not my job to be clever. It's my job to have a look at your system and help you see if you've missed anything, and that comes with consequences, right? If we have missed too many things, then I can take your badge away from you. But much more helpful is, look, you've got a problem here that you need to fix. And again, from the company's perspective, if I'm being audited and you found something that I've missed, I should be grateful, right? And go, well, thank you very much. You spotted something that could have cost me massively. And I want to fix that. I need to solve that. So that's how it should work. And in terms of systems, I've seen some spectacularly good systems, and I've seen some dreadfully awful systems. I had one audit where we got just out of the opening meeting, and which, if you've ever been audited, you know that's how the day starts. And I asked, we'd waited an hour for people to turn up to this meeting, and it was just this poor guy who was like, well, it's not me you really need to speak to. I've just been thrown under the bus here.
Oh,
But
wow.
we got an hour in. I'm like, look, if we wait any longer, I'm not going to be able to finish the audit today. So we need to get started. I said to you, let's make a start. I said, just this is the scope I've got for you. This is the statement of applicability I've got for you. Is that correct? And he said, what's the statement of applicability? I was like, okay, we just need we need to stop
Need to
here.
pause and come back.
and failed them. I was like, sorry, you can't pass this audit. This is yeah. So that was pretty bad.
Are there aspects of running a business that people generally do well because it's something that most people find easier, and it's not as painful to think about, and therefore they're better at it, and therefore there are bits that you consistently see people try to put off because it's a bit of a pain, and there's an area that they're weaker in as a business?
Yeah. I'll tell you the one area that consistently companies struggle with is supplier management. Nobody likes supplier management. It's annoying, it's boring, it's time consuming, it's frustrating. Unless, of course, that's your job, in which case I take it all back. I'm sure you're very good at what you do and you love the job. But for most people, particularly in smaller businesses where you're trying to just make stuff happen, right? Having to go and check your auditor, your suppliers, I'm flipping heck. What a frustrating job. So it's actually one of the things I do really early on with my clients is say, look, this is supplier management. It's something we have to do. I'm really sorry. you got to do this. I make it as light touch as possible. There are some great sort of cheat routes that make the whole process easier. If we can say, look, again, drive it by risk, right? This supplier, what are the chances they're going to go wrong? And if it goes wrong, how bad is that going to be for me? And that will give you a nice risk score. And based on the risk score, you can decide whether or not you need to do further work to understand how scary they are, right? So a company like me, I'm coming in to audit you, right? So let's say that's the supplier relationship. So you'd risk assess that and go, well, if Andy screws up as a business, how bad is that for us? Well, probably not that bad. I might have seen some stuff, but I haven't got any of your data, right? You're not giving me things. And then you go, well, how likely is he to screw up? Well, he sort of works in information security, so we're going to believe not that likely, hopefully. Well, that would give me a tiny risk score. So you say, well, at a risk score like that, we don't need to go any further. We'll just go, thanks very much, make sure we've got terms and conditions, and they talk about information security in there somewhere. All done. That's easy. The ones that are more likely to screw up or have greater access to your data, bit more risk, so we do a little bit more work and just go and ask them for some sensible badges and assurances and insurance and that kind of stuff. But again, it's the kind of stuff that if it's your business and if you had the headspace to think about this stuff, you start going, actually, that really does matter, doesn't it? If I'm giving my data to that business and that business screws up, I'm finished. Probably ought to check they're not going to do that. That kind of thing, right? Anyway, sorry, lots of talking again.
No, it's good. The information is always helpful. I think one of the things I was interested in then, what are the, because we've discussed before when we've obviously had audits and stuff together, sort of different tools and so on that are useful for just keeping things safe. Like I think one of them you showed me was AFI for backing up all of your emails, for example. So regardless of someone going in and deleting everything, you've got a backed up copy pretty much instantly elsewhere. What are the types of things, though, that the simple things that smaller businesses can put in place to really protect themselves? We've spoken on a previous podcast on cybersecurity about having multi-factor authentication on your emails. Like if you're going to do it on nothing else, do it on there, because once someone's in your emails, they can reset everything else. But are there other tools like AFI and backing up emails that are sort of easy wins for companies to implement?
There are some, yeah. I, I say to my clients that I am incredibly lazy. If I don't have to do something, or if I can automate something, I'm going to do that, right? But I recognise that I'm incredible. Someone said, "No, Andy, you're incredibly efficient." That sounds way better, but I'm not sure that's true. I think I'm just lazy. And but I'm willing to pay a bit to be lazy, because ADL is my business. I run this business. I'm very busy in this business, thankfully. People seem to like working with me. But that brings challenges, like how do I stay on top of all the other stuff? So anything I can automate that gives me assurance that stuff's happening, I'll spend some money on that. So you're right. AFI is a tool that you can use to back up Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 or other platforms, and it's literally a set it and forget it. So you turn it on, you point it at the accounts you want backed up, it'll just do it, and you can go in and check periodically to make sure it's doing its job, but it's just doing it. I use a tool called Ninja One. It's a remote monitoring and measuring tool, RMM solution, and it's great because I can connect my company machines to essentially install an agent on it, and it will take care of patching them for me. And it will just patch and update and maintain not just the operating system, but a whole bunch of software on there as well. And again, switch it on, set it, pretty much forget it. I check in on it, obviously, because you're supposed to do that too. But it's just taking care of my stuff, and I haven't got to remember to go and do that as a separate job. These things are great. So any opportunities to automate stuff, take them. That would be my key thing. And then if you've got a project management system, I don't know, like Monday.com or Asana or something like that, or ISMS Online, I know you're using that for your sister. If you're using those kind of, use the repeat features. So that you get a reminder to go and do the task, so you can go and do the task, because there's a lot to remember in 27001. But just from a general security perspective, the tips you've had there already: use decent passwords, use multi-factor authentication anywhere and everywhere it's available. Yes, if you're putting money in it, or if you put in personal data in it, turn on MFA and don't blink about that. Yes, I know it's tremendously inconvenient and annoying. Well, more so for the hackers than for you. So let's do that. Yeah.
But I suppose more inconvenient for yourself when you get hacked, and when someone's pushing a load of stuff out from your emails, and you got to then go after people and say, by the way, this wasn't me.
Yeah, and my industry is particularly guilty of doing how before we do why, and most people need that the other way around, right? We don't understand why we've got to do something, so the how part of doing that is just annoying. If we'd explained the why first and got you on board with why this is so important, maybe the how goes away a little bit. It's like, what is stopping me from hacking your email? If it's just your password, what happens if I intercept your password or guess it? Well, it's game over for you. I mean, literally game over for you as a business. So let's not let that happen. Turn on MFA. It's an easy step, right? Little bit more inconvenient every now and then when you have to put the code in. So what? Get over it.
For anyone that doesn't know what MFA is, it's you basically get like an app, don't you, that gives you a 6-digit code.
That's right. Schoolboy error. You used the acronym first. It's your fault. Yeah, no. So multi-factor authentication, also known as two-step authorization or two-factor authentication, gets a bunch of. In fact, I saw the National Cybersecurity Centre called it something else the other day. I was like, what on earth? Oh, right, MFA. Two-step verification, I think they called it. But yeah, essentially, you've got a little app on your phone that's generating a 6-digit code that changes usually every 60 seconds. And that's synchronized to the system that you're signing into. So you put in your username, password, it'll ask you for the verification code, and there you go, sign in.
Yeah, and you can also use the password managers, can't you, for like LastPass and 1Password and all that kind of stuff, where it will generate a disgusting password that you'll never remember, but because you've got the apps on your phone and it's on your browser extensions, and it will pre-fill all of that for you every time you log into something, and you're not having to remember it. But you've got something that you won't even be able to hack yourself, let alone someone else.
Okay, here we go. Let's do the password thing just because it's fun. I do this a lot when we do training, and trying to explain this is the segue, right? Because everyone's fed up of hearing about flipping complex passwords and how important they are. So I do this thing. Say, we'll take a 6-character password, right? And we'll make it all lowercase letters and numbers. I used to have a password that was 6 characters, lowercase letters and numbers. That's 2.2 billion possible combinations. Right, and I'm going to hack that password. I'm going to do what's called a brute force hack, where I'm just going to guess. I'm going to keep guessing and guessing and guessing until I get it right. But that's quite a lot of possible combinations. Going to get sore fingers, so I'm going to use software to do that hack for me. Okay, so Matt, it's your 6-character password. How long do you think it's going to take my software to crack it?
Oh, I saw a graph about this, depending on length and whether it includes characters.
Oh, you did.
And
I
stuff.
showed you it.
I think you did, but I can't remember how long it was. It was something really short, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a blink of an eye. And in fact, I did this just the other day, and the first guess was 5 minutes, the second one was 2 minutes, and the third guess they went with 1 minute. I was like, no, it's the blink of an eye. So the ridiculous thing about that, right, is if you have a 6-character password that's lowercase letters and numbers, it's going to take you longer to type it in than it's going to take for me to hack it. That's just dumb. So we go from 6 characters, same rules though, lowercase letters and numbers. We'll take it up to 10 characters and say, how long will it take me to hack that one? And we go from the blink of an eye up to 3 weeks. So again, this whole why and how, if you understand that adding those 4 extra characters is going to take you from a blink of an eye to 3 weeks to compromise your password, as a hacker, I've now got to really want to hack your password to spend 3 weeks trying to guess it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm probably not gonna. I'm gonna move on to the other person who's got a 6-character password instead, and that's the name of the game. Make it harder than everyone else, and password managers do all the heavy lifting for you. You still need a really good password to sign into those, but once you've signed into that, everything else is managed for you, and they can be bonkers. 20, 40, 60, 100 character passwords, whatever. Doesn't matter. You haven't got to remember.
Yeah, biggest win. I think it's the biggest win you can have. From a security perspective, as a small business, is doing that. What are the things that people generally do wrong where they end up losing data? Because I think there's loads of different ways in the surveying industry where, in terms of how people store data. So I've seen the more modern side where people are using a CRM, like SurveyBook as an example. It's all cloud based and backed up and so on. And then all the way back down to the older style where it's paper records and they're put in storage, and they've got the other risks then of, okay, fine, you've got a copy, but how do you do a GDPR report for someone if they say, what data do you hold on me, and what happens if it gets caught in a flood or a fire? Then you've lost everything. Right. Yeah. What are the most common ways that you see people losing data? Is it just the fact they don't back stuff up properly and they don't know about that, or are there other things that people don't think of?
Well, so yes, backups are a key one, right? And the problem with backups is they tend to cost something, as in financially, and because a lot of business owners, they don't like spending money, because that's their money that they're having to spend. Literally, if it's your business and you're paid by dividends, anything you're spending out of the business is coming out of your profit, and you don't get the money, right? So we don't want to spend that money, but the killer is when you lose something that you can't get back and it hurts you more than it would have cost, and that's just stupid at that point. So but the process in which people go into thinking about backups generally is broken. We have to think about backups in terms of what can we afford to lose. Because if you think about it that way up, it starts driving what you ought to be spending on the solution to back up your data. Right. Yes. If I can't afford, let's say I've got, and take it into a big business, I've got 1,000 employees, right, working on this system. They all work on it all of the time, and if that system goes down, I've literally got 1,000 people sat on their hands. Right.
Yeah.
So our recovery time objective, our RTO, becomes important in that setting. How quickly can we get this system back? Then we have to start thinking about, well, how much data can I afford to lose? Now, if I've got 1,000 employees sat working at their desks all day, every day, and I back that solution up once a day, if it blows up before I hit that backup point, I've lost the previous 24 hours work, which is quite a lot of work if I've got 1,000 people who are using it. So can I afford that? Can I afford to just throw away 1,000 man days,
Yeah.
person days? Sorry. So as businesses, we need to think, how quickly do we need it back, and how much can we afford to lose? Because that needs to drive our decision-making process around what the backup solution looks like. In a small business setting, happily and thankfully, the the new day of software as a service, which is not new anymore, but it is still a growing arena, has brought with it the joy of not having to think about backups very much, because we are outsourcing that to the software as a service provider. So people using Survey Booker, for example, they are relying on Survey Booker to do the backing up and the restoration if it all blows up, which means that Survey Booker has to have very robust disaster recovery and business continuity plans in place.
Yeah.
Okay, so take it back into the business setting. The thing that often doesn't get looked at is, what about the stuff that people aren't putting into the software as a service solutions? What about the stuff that's actually sitting on desktops, as in laptops, desktop machines? Because if those machines blow up, that's a world of pain. And I'm so sorry. See you, sweetheart. Have a nice day. That was going so well.
Might be fun to keep that in.
Yeah. It's that BBC moment, isn't it? So it's. I remember working. I used to work at university, looking after IT for one of the departments there. And I remember one day, this guy, he called me up. He said, "Andy, my laptop's not working." And so I went over to his office, had a look, and sure enough, this thing was just dead. Absolutely bricked. And I was like, "Okay, so sorry, it's dead." He said, "But all my work's on there." I said, "No, it's not. We've got the network drive for that. That's your work's on there, right?" He said, No, it was all on my laptop." I was like, "Well, sucks to be you, fella. I'm sorry. This is dead." I mean, the hard drive had just had enough. And people tend to forget that can happen, right? that all that stuff you've been working on can be gone overnight if that's the only place you've got it. So we need to make sure we've got redundancies to bake, because that's a key way people lose data. The other is the nasty ways, right, of data breaches and hacks and stuff like that. Breaches tend to be user driven, as in your employees will do something. This is not casting shade on people. I am stupid. I have stupid moments. We all have stupid moments. So I'm just going to use that word. One of your employees has done something stupid. They've recognized they've done something stupid, but that's too late now. The horse is bolted, right? So that's a nasty way. And then the more insidious is, we've left a door open, or we've left a vulnerability unpatched, or something exploitable, and some bad actor has exploited that vulnerability and taken data away from us. I'm using lots of words and not even sure I've answered your question.
But I think it's an interesting one to think about, though, because there are challenges with every storage method. So if you are keeping paper records, then really, do you then photocopy everything in case the one location you've stored it in, things get stolen, or there's a flood or a fire, then you've lost everything? Because as a surveying firm, once you've done a job, you're meant to keep the records for 15 years for potential claims and all that kind of stuff. Equally, if you put it on a hard drive, like you said, the hard drive can go, like a USB stick or an external drive, or you can put a password on to encrypt it and protect the data. But if you forget the password, you can't get into it, so you've effectively lost it. So then it's, do you put it online, and then do you take backups of what you've put online? So there's different things to think about, and risks with each. But certainly I wouldn't want to store anything on my desktop.
No, right, and you're absolutely right. There was an interesting fine issued by the ICO a little while back for a data breach, and you may be familiar. GDPR changed the game on what we mean by breach, because they include in that accidental loss or destruction of data. So if you've accidentally lost data, or if it's accidentally been destroyed and it shouldn't have been, that's a breach too. And lots of people don't consider that, but this particular fine was for a pharmaceutical, I think a chemist basically, and they'd left some paper data at the back of a warehouse. It had got water damaged and was unrecoverable, and they got fined for that. So coming back to the paper thing, paper data is still a real thing, and we do still need to consider it. And like I say, thinking about, well, what is that data? How important is it? If it's just old newspaper clippings, fine, stick it in a box somewhere. If it's really really important and we can't afford for it to disappear, then fireproof safes and fireproof cabinets and stuff like that are you've got to spend the money. Turns out that's a thing. You've actually got to spend the money to get the right solution. But again, risk driven. What are the chances of it happening? And if it happened, how bad would that be? That should be guiding us.
Definitely. I'd like to actually talk about the GDPR aspect, because I think, as you say, I think there are a lot of misconceptions as to what it covers or what the principle behind it is. What are the misconceptions around it? Because I think there's sometimes people worry about it too much, in the sense of, ICO are going to try and fine you for absolutely anything, and actually it's more of a principle that's there to drive how you treat data. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a nice description. Okay, so I think perhaps the biggest misconception with GDPR is people believing that it's a bad thing. It's not. It's a really, really good thing. Unfortunately, the way it was sold, they should have got the marketing people involved, and they didn't. I think is how this works. But essentially, look, if take yourself out of business. What's GDPR about? It's about protecting my data, right, and to stop my data from being abused by other entities, legal people, so companies, generally speaking. So to stop another company taking my data and abusing my data and putting me at risk because they're not looking after it properly or because they're treating it wrongly or whatever, right? Long and short of it is, I end up suffering. So anything that stops that from happening, that's good news, right? Now, unfortunately, how data works and the value of our personal data is actually quite hard to connect with. And it is, and I don't mean this disingenuously or disrespectfully, it is beyond the reach of most people to understand it. So if we ask the question, and I'm hoping I don't get in trouble for this, but why is TikTok bad news? And in fact, if you go and look in the US, they're trying to ban TikTok from being used at all in the US. And one of the reasons they're citing it is because the algorithms that are in place feed you certain types of information, which means it could be used by a state-sponsored actor to start feeding you misinformation, fake news, and stuff that basically is not good, and start influencing how people think. And that, over a generation, becomes tremendously scary news, right? And we should worry about that.
Well, on that note, just quickly to jump in, and I haven't fact checked this, so I put that as a caveat. But I was reading that in China for TikTok, if you're below 14, they tend to push you content that is educational and might be based on science and maths and all this kind of stuff. And of course, in every other country, they're pushing silly dance videos. So there's obviously a difference in how they're trying to push their own population in terms of driving intellect.
Precisely that. So what do we do if a generation down the line we have incredibly intelligent people in one particular part of the world and somewhat
good dancers?
Great, brain numbing stuff. I watch some of my kids watching some of the stuff on, not so much on TikTok because I've told them not to, but on other platforms, just going, why are you wasting your life on this stuff? But anyway, that's a whole other debate. So back to the GDPR thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So we want to our data protected, and like I say, because it's beyond the reach of most people to understand that if we do something like that, sooner or later we can start to influence elections and how people vote, and that means democracy is dead. Bad. We said, well, people won't get this, so instead of expecting people to get it, what we're going to do is we're going to put the responsibility for doing things right onto the companies that want to use the data. Now, the problem with doing it that way around, and it's sensible if you think about it, let's go top down rather than bottom up on this. Generally, it's a good approach. The problem with that is that you end up with companies going, oh, well, that's annoying. That's going to cost us money. And then you get people in the companies going, change? I don't like change.
Yeah.
And we get stuck in this loop of, oh, GDPR is rubbish. I hate it. No, it's not. It's really good, and we should love it. But because of the way it was imposed on us, it got a bad rap. So at its essence, it is about protecting your data from being abused, which ultimately means it's protecting you from suffering consequences because other people couldn't be bothered to do a job right. There you go. That's GDPR in a nutshell.
I think it's misunderstood as well from a consumer perspective, because there's a lot of times where someone will shout, "That's my rights under GDPR," and you go, "Well, actually, no. I can't just delete you from our system because I legally need to hold your data because you're a customer of ours,
Yes.
for whatever period before I can do anything." So yes and no. That's probably not the best example of it, but there are times
No, that's
where you see
actually a
people counting
genuinely
it.
good example. Yeah, it is
Mm.
a because it's not terribly well understood, and because people have heard this. Oh, GDPR. You go, oh yes, I have rights. You go, well you do, but it doesn't. Data about you isn't necessarily your data, and I know that sounds weird, but there's stuff that I know about you because I've done work for you that maybe okay, let's go with this. So I've done work with yourself, Matt, and there's stuff I know about how your business works that I just have in my head. I can't delete that.
No, no.
You don't have rights over this stuff I've managed to collect. Matt's a really great guy. I haven't written that down anywhere,
And I've
and
not
even
paid you
if
to
I
say that
had,
either.
yeah, no. But if you asked me to delete you out your systems, and I had somewhere, so this guy called Matt is a great guy, and he runs a really cool business. That's information that's valuable to me. It's not necessarily able to identify you, so I don't have to delete that information. And understanding what we do and don't have to do, understanding what GDPR is and what it means for your business, it starts with what data are we processing and why. If you've got a lawful basis for processing that information, then sometimes that lawful basis will trump that person's beliefs.
Yeah, yeah.
um, who paid you money? Well, HMRC. It turns out this fella did. Right. Okay. This fella wants to delete their data. Well, HMRC says hang on to it for 6+ current years. Go figure.
This might be slightly more of a lawyer question, so potentially not one you can answer. But in terms of that GDPR bits and rights, what a lot of surveyors do is they'll work with estate agents, conveyancers, and so on, and they'll have a referral relationship. Are there things that need to be considered during that referral process in terms of what consents are needed, and do you become, once you've received the data, you become a data controller of that, don't you? You're not then the data processor for the referral partner.
Yes, that's right. So understanding where you are controller and where your processor is really helpful. And so really, really quickly, a data controller, that's the entity that decides what information we're collecting and why. A data processing or data processor is processing data on behalf of a data controller. So in that scenario, agent has introduced surveyor to third party clients. That is just an introduction. The surveyor isn't processing on behalf of the agent, right? So it's just a neat introduction. However, the agent should be asking me, can I pass your data on to surveyor? And to begin with, that surveyor can start processing. If I say yes, right, I've given consent for the introduction, the surveyor can start using my information on the grounds of legitimate interest, because apparently I've expressed an interest via this agent. They believe I'm interested in hearing what they have to say. So this is a sensible transaction, right? So legitimate interest is quite a tricky one. It's a good one, but it's tricky and often abused. Legitimate interest only works where we can balance our interests. So I'm interested in processing your data, but probably you are interested in me processing your data too, right? So that's balanced. Or there's an obvious and reasonable imbalance, like you owe me money, and until you've paid me that money, I'm not going to remove your data on the grounds of legitimate interest. I have an overwhelming legitimate interest in processing your data, right? So, yes, on that basis, that introduction thing can work. But like I say, the agents ought to be asking my permission before they pass my data to a third party.
Awesome. That's good to know, and it helps clarify. And I suppose we'll just put in a caveat that it's not legal advice.
That is not legal advice. It's
So speak
pretty
to a lawyer
robust
just to go.
advice, but it's not
Yeah,
legal advice.
perfect. Always good to have in there. I
Oh,
suppose then as a
just on
final,
that, sorry,
yeah,
Matt, really quickly, as a thought, one of the difficulties with data protection, and I'm going to upset some people, and I don't mean to upset people here. And feel free to take this out of the podcast if you think it's too controversial. One of the challenges for legal entities being involved in data protection is they start from how do I protect the client, and the key to data protection is how do I protect the individual. Right. So we have to start with recognizing that GDPR and data protection is all about protecting the rights and freedoms of the individual, not the legal entity that is wanting to process their data. If we can start from that perspective, actually, it changes our thinking on what we're trying to do with information, because we go, hang on a minute, is this actually in the interest of this person, or am I, do I have a good reason why it's not in their interest? They don't understand that it's in their interest. They can't, so I'm going to have to do it anyway, like legal protection or something like that. But if we start from the premise of how do I protect the data subjects rather than how to protect my business, we'll end up with a much, much better outcome. And as I say, the danger of asking solicitors to get involved and say, can you help us with our privacy policy or with our records of processing activities that you might be obliged to do, that kind of stuff, is that they will start with, well, okay, so business, we need to protect you. So no, you need to protect my data subjects. There we go. Anyway,
yes,
that was my little rant. I'll stop now.
it's good. It's good to have different perspectives on things, because obviously if you're someone that doesn't deal with data and security and all that kind of stuff every day, then it's not something you necessarily have sort of different perspectives on and viewpoints. I suppose as a final question, if you're whether you're starting out or you're a smaller firm and you're looking to grow, what are the sort of best areas to focus on? If you from say within the ISO 27001 framework, would it be just things like general systems and data security, and whether it's how you do your passwords and stuff, and maybe your training and onboarding and offboarding of people? Would they be the best areas to focus on, or are there other bits that you think would be the sort of the best wins you can get as a small firm?
Yeah, okay, that's a really tricky question. There's there's a sort of ongoing fight / debate in my industry about, are your employees, are they your first or last line of defense from nasty things? And the sensible answer to that question is yes. Yes, they are. If one of my users has opened up a phishing email, clicked on the link, and is about to put their login details into a phishing website, then in that moment, they are the last line of defense. Everything, all of my technical controls up to that point have failed. It's now down to them. Are they going to put their data in to a malicious website? Right. We can flip that the other way around as well and say, well, they have got to this point. Now it's up to them. If they fail as the first line of defense, all of my technical controls are now coming into play to try and protect me from the mistake they've made. So yes, they are first and last line of defense. Both things are true. So training our staff to understand cyber risk, and again, we've got to start with why, not how. If they understand why good passwords are important, they're more likely to use good passwords. If they understand why they don't have access to things that they don't need access to, turns out that's a bad idea and they can put themselves at risk, then they're more likely to leave that kind of stuff alone and not try and access it. There's some good educational stuff that we can get into our team that will help. If we can raise awareness, raise understanding, and just literally lift the bar on what security looks like within the business, that will absolutely help us. Then I'd say, again, come back to be lazy, automate everywhere, spend a bit of money in getting good automation tools in place that will do some of the heavy lifting for you and provide you with visibility and assurance that things are working the way they're supposed to. Those would be my two things.
Yeah, I think they're good points, because you read a lot that a breach or something going wrong is down to human error rather than Systems do make mistakes, absolutely, but a lot of it is down to human error. So if you say putting something into the wrong site or deleting the wrong thing, whatever it might be. One of those things around automation is you might not want to pay until you go, okay, I'll manually back up each week or day or whatever you want to do, move stuff on my desktop to the cloud or whatever it might be. The reality is you get so busy that before you realize it, 3 weeks or 4 weeks have gone past, and you've left it, and then suddenly something does happen and you've lost everything. So
Yes.
automation protects you a lot more because it's definitely happening. And it's just one less thing to think about when you've got so many other things to do within a business.
Yeah, right. And it is a common mistake, and I am absolutely certain I'm guilty of it myself, is that, particularly in small businesses, we get very busy doing stuff. And a lot of it is stuff that probably we don't need to or shouldn't be doing. We could pay a bit of money for someone to automate that, and actually, that me not having to do that means I can earn more money, like way more money doing it. I used to. So we have some wood burning stoves, and I used to go out and salvage wood and bring it home and chop it all up and everything. And part of it in my head at the time, this was going back quite a while now. In my head at the time was I'm saving money. And then I started like adding up how much time I was spending collecting the wood and chopping it all up and splitting it and stacking it and stuff like that. I thought, I am not saving money here. This is costing me a fortune. If I was doing the work, I could have bought that 20 times over instead of having to go and chop it. And we spend time and effort in the wrong areas. So spend some money automating where you can to do the heavy lifting for you, so you can focus your time on the more productive stuff that actually earns you money.
That's a fair point, which is you don't realise how much time you're wasting on things until you start writing it out and going, actually, I've lost 2 hours today on pointless admin because we're doing all these different things, and now I could have spoken to 20 more customers or whatever it would have been.
Yes.
But fair. Thank you for coming on today. If anyone wants to get in touch to learn more about whether it's ISO 27001 or just general things they can potentially do within their businesses, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, cool. So if you want to get in touch with me, that'd be great. You can email me at Andy@ADL, so Alpha Delta Lima Consulting, all one word, adlconsulting.co.uk. Just ping me an email, say you heard me from Matt, and I'll be great to talk to you.
Nice. We'll speak again soon.
All right, Matt, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.